I want to begin by talking about living in the moment. It's a very common concept. It's a modern concept to live in the moment. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book called The Power of Now. And as coaches, we always talk about focus on what you're doing right now. In sport, if you're thinking about how you missed the pass or did something wrong last time, then you're not totally focused right now. We dream of the future, we build on the future, but we live in the now, and sometimes it's to our own detriment. The best possible example I can think to illustrate this point is my own son. A year and a half ago when he was 5, we participated in the Calgary Run for Water, which is a wonderful 5 and 10K event that raises money for clean water projects in Ethiopia. And when my son was 5, he was able to do it all himself. The year before, I carried him most of the way, but he made it all himself. And when you cross the finish line at this run, there are volunteers there, and they place a medal around your neck. It's a beautiful water drop-shaped medal. And I noticed my son took the medal off almost immediately. And I thought this was unusual. And I went over to him and I said, "Son, you think of how far you've come in 1 year, and look how short your legs are. 5K is a long way for those little legs, and you did it all by yourself. You should be very proud. You should wear that medal." And this was his response, and he did it about this fast, too. He went, "I'm going to the bouncy castle." And I thought, that's living in the now. And sometimes it's too much. We should look back and acknowledge how far we've come, and that's why I'm very proud to be a part of this event here today. And it's also why I mention the donors and your family and friends and classmates. They're a part of your team. You'll be part of teams your whole life. Your coworkers might be who you think of as your team, but it's your support, it's everybody involved. And I feel like I've been on both sides of the good team, bad team experience, and I can speak firsthand as to how much of a difference your team makes. When I first joined the Canadian skeleton team, it was right when skeleton was being reintroduced into the Olympic program, and as such, it became a funded sport from Sport Canada. So prior to that time, not only did you have to qualify for the team, but you had to fundraise and you had to get yourself to the competitions on your own. So I found myself at my second ever World Cup, and there was one corner at this particular track that I just couldn't figure out. So I asked my teammate who had been on the team for years how he did it. And his answer was, "You know what, I've been paying my way to come over here for 5 or 6 years. I've paid my own track fees. I've slid this track hundreds of times, and I've sat in that snowbank to watch literally hundreds and hundreds of people go down this track to figure out how to do this corner, this specific corner, perfectly, and now that I've figured it out, I don't think it's appropriate that you would just show up and your first occasion, I would just tell you the answer." And from a logical perspective, I couldn't argue with that. I couldn't say that if I wasn't in his position, I wouldn't have felt exactly the same way. But as you can imagine, it created some competition within our team. And I've actually seen research that said that if you inject competition during the learning phase, it has a negative effect. And that's the importance of team. And that team as it existed, and that lack of team, if you will, was reflected in how well we did at the Salt Lake Olympics, in which we finished 6th, 10th, and 17th. But to this specific athlete's credit, 2 years later, he approached myself individually and the other members of the team individually, and he said, "You know what, I've done this wrong. I thought I was protecting myself, but I've created a barrier between the team and myself. And I could be benefiting from your information, you could be benefiting from my information. Can we be a team? Can we try and do this differently?" And so that's what we did. And it took a couple of years. It was a progression. The trust had to be gained there. But by the time we hit Torino, I can honestly say I was invested in my other teammates' performances because we played a role in that. We were a true team. And for that athlete in particular, those 2 years were the best of his career. He was the World Cup overall champion on both of those years. And as a team, we finished 1st, 2nd, and 4th in Torino, as I mentioned in the video. And that's something I'm, to this day, very proud of, is how our team performed.